Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with another manga review for Dr. Stone. Manga chapter Z equals 159, titled Lock On. And who are they locking on to in this chapter? It's obviously going to be Senku, and that's mainly like the main premise of this chapter, having the Dr. Zeno and Stanley trying to figure out who Senku is, who the scientist of the Kingdom of Science is, and eliminating them. And do they succeed in that endeavor in this chapter? Well, we're just gonna have to wait and see until I tell you about it at the end of this chapter. So without the way, let's get started. So we start the chapter off with Stanley being told by Dr. Zeno that the scientist that he is aiming to kill is not Taiju, but is actually Senku. And if you remember from last chapter, the main reason how Dr. Zeno found out that the scientist is Senku and not Taiju is because Luna told Stanley, or mouthed to Stanley, Carlos, and Max, that Taiju's best friend is Senku, remembering this child that he messaged back and forth about rockets and stuff. And he's like, okay, Stanley, Taiju isn't the scientist, Senku is, to where Stanley responds with, okay, who is Senku? And from there, we cut over to the title page. And then from the title page, it's nothing really special. You just see the muzzle of the sniper rifle being pointed at the ship at the Kingdom of Science. And then you have Dr. Zeno reaching out for something. And we get in the next page what that something is. So we have Dr. Zeno reaching out for what is assumedly like some sort of disc, where we have him remembering, like, I remember this kid. We talked about rockets and stuff before the petrification, and how this makes sense because he remembers that he recorded the voice of an individual that showed really like precise judgment over the radio, and from there he's like, okay, that must have been Senku. But the problem is, I don't remember like what he looks like. So he says that, okay, so what I'm going to do is use the recorded transmission, because he always records every transmission, and luckily enough he recorded the transmission of Senku's voice. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna use his voice to deduce who Senku is and like gain like a general height of him, Senku, which, okay, I'm not sure how accurate that could be, but apparently they did question the scientists for this panel, so there's a possibility that you can deduce someone's voice and compare it to their height, which for me, like, I can accept that, because when it comes to the human body, there are other different ways that you can use proportions of the body to indicate like a person's like weight, like the length of your arms can indicate the height of a person's body, or like different proportions of the body can equal to other proportions. The only problem that I may have with like the voice in determining the height, because he basically explains about like how he's able to do it by calculating like the vocal frequency and comparing it to like the average body proportions of potentially like a 19-year-old Japanese boy. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I just have like one problem with that, and the example that I have is me, because I'm a 6'1", 300+ pound male with the voice of a middle schooler that has yet to hit puberty. I'm fairly certain you could not tell that I am 6'1" from this voice right here. So that's like the only thing that I have, but like, just because I'm the anomaly does not mean that it's not a possibility. So he deduces that Senku is around 5'7", 5'8", and that is actually something that I have a problem with when it comes to translations of Dr. Stone, as well as like this idea of like being a manga based in science, and it's the fact that they used feet. No scientist in their right mind in whatever field would ever use feet. They always use the metric system. So luckily enough, I corrected how tall Senku should be based off of Dr. Zeno, who is a scientist. Yes, he may be an American scientist, but guess what? All scientists use the metric system because it just makes the most sense, and it makes everything equal across the board. So in actuality, Senku isn't 5'7", 5'8". He's 1.7 meters. I had to correct that. You just have to. So with Dr. Zeno basically calculating how tall Senku is and saying that he's a 19-year-old male, this is enough information for Stanley to deduce who Dr. Senku is, and he narrows it down to 3 individuals. So you have Senku 1, the original Senku, and Senku 2. So while Stanley is trying to figure out which kid he's gonna kill, we have Risui, who alerts everyone to the fact that there is a sniper. And to no surprise, everyone begins to panic and run away. And even when it comes to Luna, she's like, how did they figure it out? She makes a mistake and looks in the direction of Stanley, which Stanley thinks to himself like, Luna, don't look this way, then they'll know my location. But then Stanley immediately thinks, actually, no, wait, I can use this to my advantage. So he deduces that whoever the scientist is will for the most part not really panic and assess the situation, and the best way to assess the situation is to indicate where the sniper is. So Stanley looks at the 3 individuals that he believes to be Senku and waits for one of them to turn his direction, and by doing so indicates which one of them is the intelligent, who is the scientist leader, which means that he now knows who Senku is, so that he can kill him. And Senku probably realizes that at this exact same time, because he just has this expression of fear and dread and, oh, I'm about to die, aren't I? So as any logical person would do when faced with a sniper, he runs and he tries to hide. And to the credit of Senku by Stanley, he's like, okay, I see what this kid is doing. He's trying to get out of the way of my sniper rifle. Not bad, kid. Not bad. You're still gonna die, but not bad, kid. But then you have this moment where Stanley is talking to Dr. Zeno, and he says, all right, I got him in my sights. Last chance. Do you want me to kill him? And then from here, we get more flashback of Dr. Zeno remembering Senku, and he's thinking about like the possibilities of like letting him live and letting him die and what benefit that he would have. And he thinks that if Senku were to live and join forces with me, then that would just mean like whatever's going to happen, absolute dominance over the world is doubled, meaning that he's 2 times likely that his plan of taking over the world will succeed absolutely. But then he also thinks about, but that wouldn't be what Senku would accept. He would never accept how I would rule over the world. So you have this moment where he just has his hand on his face, and he just has like this expression of, well, what should I do? And he comes to a conclusion where he tells Stanley to do it. He orders Stanley to kill Senku, which Stanley automatically, he doesn't even say anything. He's like, bang, shoots off the sniper rifle. Now I just want to take a moment here to say this. This was to be expected. We have seen where they use science in a very similar way, but Dr. Zeno uses it more to take over the world, while Senku uses the science to just understand the world and to gain knowledge. And we also know for a fact that Senku would never willingly kill anyone to achieve his goal, as seen when he had to fight Tsubasa, as well as when we went to the island arc to where he fought that other scientist with the Medusa. We've always seen that Senku would never resort to violence and killing unless it was absolutely necessary. While with Dr. Zeno, on the other hand, violence is his first initiative. He will always act first, speak later. And he would always use violence to get what he wants, and always use science to get what he wants, which in this case is world domination. So he realizes that Senku would never agree to that, so there would be no reason to keep him alive. Basically, he's detaching himself from Senku so that he can achieve his goal. And with that in mind, this allows for Stanley to shoot Senku. But come on, this is Senku. This is the scientist boy that can do no wrong when it comes to science. And from here, we see that he is panicking. He's trying to find a way to make sure that he doesn't die And what he does is that he combines either kudzu or cornstarch with this type of fluid to create a diluent fluid, which, how he explains with it, it's basically a type of fluid that under a lot of stress will go from a liquid to a more solid state. And that this idea of this solid state was possibly tested for bulletproof vest. And something else that I want to put in is that there's technically no such thing as a bulletproof vest. It's very bullet resistant, or you can say that it's bulletproof up to a certain caliber of bullets. Because let's say this substance is bulletproof, it would most likely be bulletproof to a normal pistol, but Stanley has a rifle. And with this specific type of bullet, it doesn't just do like a piercing shot. From what we see, the bullet fires, goes through the wood of the ship or the metal of the ship, and then it breaks apart. And as it breaks apart, it goes through this bag of diluent, and it appears to be slowing the bullets down, but it doesn't slow them down enough to not hit Senku and cause him to bleed, which leads to the end of this chapter. What I think happened in these scenes is that Senku, when he was panicking, created the substance that could absorb a large chunk of the shock of the bullets and the fragments aiming towards him. But because he did it in a rush, and because this is something that isn't really tested that well, then he was shot. He did take damage, but he is still alive. Another way to kind of understand what is happening here is this myth, or this idea that a fat man who is shot by a bullet can survive because of the fat that is between the layer of skin and the internal organs. And this is kind of how that substance works, where it works to slow the bullet down to a point to prevent fatal damage, but it doesn't necessarily prevent Senku from being shot, from bleeding, and taking damage. All it does is, for the most part, make sure that the bullets don't kill him. So what many people are going to think is like, oh my gosh, Senku is dead, Senku is dead. No, he's not dead. He most likely did take damage, but he's still going to be alive. He's still going to be able to move. And I think that Stanley may realize this and may attempt to take another shot at him. But I think that by the time Stanley realizes this, Senku would probably already be out of his range, or probably have a way of defeating him before that moment comes. So all in all, I thought this was a really good chapter. It was a very short chapter, but overall it was still a good chapter. I enjoyed it. I had a few problems with it, which mainly came from the possible, like, how Dr. Zeno was able to determine who Senku is by the voice. I do not know the exact science of that, so that's a little bit iffy. But the main point that I probably have about this chapter is the fact that they used feet instead of meters. And as someone who has studied science for 4 or 5 years in university, you do not use the imperial system in any form of science. It is always the metric system. Come on, translators, you should know better. And I'm not blaming it on Dr. Stone. I'm not blaming it on mangaka. I am blaming it specifically on the translators, because many Americans do not understand the metric system and how easy it is. So if anything, that's a main detractor for this chapter, is the fact that they used feet instead of meters, as well as for the most part it moved at like a very accelerated pace. But I think that fits best for the situation, which is very heightened due to the fact that there was a sniper on the loose. So like I said, overall, really good chapter. Unfortunately, we are going to be on break next week, so I will not have a Dr. Stone manga review next week. But hopefully I'll be able to have some interesting content for y'all from the next week. I know for a fact that My Hero Academia Vigilantes is going to be coming out next week, so I probably will do that, and I may cover another series, maybe not, but I know we'll have at least a few videos for y'all next week. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed recording it as well as reviewing Dr. Stone. Leave a like on this video if this is a video that you like. Leave a comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, do all of that cool jazz, and I will catch you in the next video. Goodbye. Oh gosh, that was weird. Goodbye, y'all.